welcome to Telegraph Studio. I'm Alistair Green and today we're discussing food security. And joining me is Pilar Cruz, who is the Managing Director of Cargill's European chicken business. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for inviting me today.
You're welcome. I'm fascinated because we assume, don't we, that there's going to be food on our supermarket shelves all the time. But are we in danger of becoming complacent?
Food security is a very complex issue, and it affects every single person on the planet. According to the United Nations, there are about 1 billion people that go in the world without sufficient food. That's 1 in 7 people. However, we believe that food security is possible. We simply need to get everybody's engagement actively working together to increase food security.
So what are the biggest challenges around food security?
The world today produces enough food to feed pretty much everybody in every single country. The challenge is that this food doesn't get to the places where it's needed.
So where's it gone?
It is a really good question. So a lot of food goes to waste today.
So how much waste are we talking about?
Approximately 1.3 billion metric tons of food goes to waste. That's a huge number. That amount of food would be enough to feed at least 2 billion people.
Tell me more about where this waste is happening. How's it actually taking place?
Specifically at harvest, due to inadequate food distribution systems, lack of technology, lack of storage capacity that allows the farmer to be more effective at moving food from places where it is produced to places where it's needed.
Now, waste is one challenge. You mentioned there are others, so tell me about the others.
So, extreme poverty, inadequate food distribution systems, the resistance to use technology within the agricultural supply chain, government policies that inhibit free trade and negatively affect the farmer, as well as environmental impact.
So we get these various challenges and everyone understands them. So why are we finding it so difficult to get to grips with it?
It is a really good question. So food security is not a simple issue and is affected by many factors. Not only food security is impacted by natural resources such as land, precipitation, water availability, and sunshine, but it's also affected and influenced by many social factors including trade, demographics, urbanization, government policies, and the use of energy. Therefore, we need collaboration between the private and the public sectors to fight malnutrition, poverty, and increase food security.
Now, earlier on, you mentioned there's enough food for everybody, but of course the population is growing. So given that growth, do you think we've got a chance of actually keeping up with it?
Absolutely. At Cargill, we are highly optimistic about the world's ability to feed its growing population in a responsible way. In order to provide food that is safe, affordable, and nutritious for everybody in the world, a few things need to happen. Honoring competitive advantage, enabling free trade, supporting the smallholder farmer, enabling Africa to reach its full production potential, and embracing science and technology. Let me explain one of those in detail. Comparative advantage exists when countries actually grow the crop that is more appropriate for their local conditions and climate. Alistair, I have a question for you. What do you think about Egypt if I ask you to think about agriculture in Egypt?
Well, you would think there's not an awful lot of potential to grow anything there.
Absolutely, and that is the right answer. The challenge that we are facing in Egypt is that for years, the Egyptian farmer was trying to grow rice, which is not appropriate for the local conditions, given that the deserts in Egypt are so dry and there's very limited access to water. So Cargill saw an opportunity to support the farmers and help them being more productive. In partnership with CARE, a leading humanitarian organization that fights poverty, we worked around introducing a new crop, soybeans, which actually is a lot more appropriate for the conditions in Egypt. So we provided the resources and the inputs as well as training to help farmers switching from rice into soybean, and it's been a huge success. We also made a commitment to buy the entire production, giving farmers access to international prices. As a result, you can say that our farmers have been able to produce more with less in a responsible way.
Now, you've talked a lot about collaboration, and there's of course a lot of people involved from NGOs charities, even profit-oriented organisations as well. So tell me a little bit more about Cargill. I mean, where does Cargill fit in with all of this?
First of all, Alistair, let's be clear. We are not saying that Cargill can resolve this issue alone. What we are saying is that we would like to continue partnering actively with all the stakeholders to tackle the issue of food security. But let me give you an example of some of the initiatives we have in Cargill to increase food security. First and foremost, we strongly believe that farmers need to be successful so they can produce more with less in a sustainable way that allows to facilitate the process of moving foods from areas of surplus to areas of deficit. Secondly, we constantly partner with global customers to formulate healthier foods to improve the quality of the population in the local communities. And lastly, I think we do a huge amount of effort around the world to partner with local communities and NGOs to fight malnutrition and poverty.
Okay, that sounds great, but can you just go into a little bit more detail on some of those points?
So I'll give you an example in terms of how we are supporting the farmers. Globally, we have a tremendous amount of effort in providing resources, training, access to credit, and access to international prices so the farmers can be more productive and as a result be more successful. To give you an example, across China, we have trained more than 3.5 million farmers on topics around animal nutrition, sanitation, genetics, farm practices, and we currently provide more than 20 training sessions per day. As a result of these efforts, our farmers have been able to produce more with less. In Indonesia, we have trained more than 1,500 farmers to help them increase their yields in a sustainable way. We have also trained more than 2,000 livestock producers in Indonesia in the areas of animal health and nutrition, which really demonstrated a great example of how partnering with the farmers makes a huge difference.
So you told us a little bit about the company and what the company does. What about the staff? Tell me a little bit more about them.
Cargill currently employs more than 150,000 people around the world in 67 different countries, which means we have a very diverse workforce. More than 2/3 of our employees are actively working within the agricultural supply chain and the food supply chain, working every single day with millions of farmers around the world to help them being more successful.
So let's now look into the future. Where do you see food security being, say, by 2050?
It's a big question, Alistair, but despite the challenges presented by the fact that we need to feed 2 billion people more by the mid-century, at Cargill, we remain highly optimistic in the world's ability to feed its growing population in a responsible way.
Well, you've given us a huge amount to think about today. Pilar Cruz from Cargill, thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you for inviting me today.